So you flip the switch. Okay, so good morning. Matt Rozsak, co-founder and chairman of Bloq. We are a blockchain technology company. Networks and applications, and also the software that powers a lot of these new systems. And what a year it's been in 2018. Last year at this time, we were all saying to each other over the holidays, over Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, you know, do you have Bitcoin, right? That was top of mind. And this year was a little different. It was like, you know, do you have eggnog with a shot of bourbon? It was pretty rough, right? I mean, the market has changed dramatically. And, but if you look back, 2018, more wallets, crypto wallets, were opened than all the preceding years combined. And so some of that adoption, kind of glimmer into the adoption curve is coming into a little better focus. But kind of looking at this great quote by Bill Gates, and I'm certainly a victim to this, on what we think we could do in a year versus what we accomplish in about a decade. It's kind of interesting and apropos, especially for crypto, where we're now in this 10-year anniversary since Satoshi Nakamoto issued this 9-page PDF called the Bitcoin White Paper, and that was in October of 2008. And a week ago, 10 years, the Bitcoin network was launched and really started to create a new way of thinking about money, about trust, about decentralized systems, security, and this whole journey began. But the early days of crypto was not necessarily all fun and games. Early adopters of new tech, criminals kind of gravitated to this new tech with Silk Road, et cetera. We had some massive hacks of Mt. Gox, lost about half a billion dollars, which in turn made Japan one of the centers of gravity in the Bitcoin trading space. So out of that calamity, some good happened. And then the narrative went from, you know, all these hacks and kind of nefarious activity of Bitcoin to saying, you know, crypto is bad, blockchain is good. And so everybody was developing their blockchain thesis, their go-to-market, their POCs, and even Don Tapscott has a book titled Blockchain Revolution. And that is starting to figure itself out today. A lot of these POCs are trying to find their center of gravity. But in 2016, 2017, we saw this amazing Cambrian explosion of ICOs. 1,000 projects were launched. $20 billion of capital was raised. And it's really interesting to see that kind of innovation, that kind of FOMO, that kind of activity in such a short period of time. And then you look back on 2018, market crashed, and everybody's saying we're in this crypto winter. And we're going to unpack that crypto winter a little bit and see what that means. And I think over the near term, we're seeing a lot of activity on security tokens, so tokenizing real-world assets, shopping mall, a cap table, a store of gold, et cetera. And this phenomenon that we're in, it seems like it's this rhythm continues every 2 to 3 years. You know, it's the famous quote by Charles Dickens is the best of times, it's the worst of times. That's very emblematic of what's happening in crypto today. ICOs have pretty much grinded to a halt. Regulators are grappling with this new asset class. And people are, you know, kind of have their heads in the sand, which is interesting. So a year ago today, this was up on the screen, and you see the whole value of the cryptocurrency market capitalization is $730+ billion, over 1,300 projects, and a year later, we're down to 4 billion-ish in market value, down 82%. Pretty significant. And some people left the industry. Some people ran out of money. And it really pressure tests you. It's like this, it's fascinating. Whenever Bitcoin went from $1 to 10 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 to 20,000, there's this invisible hand that kind of yanks it back down. And when it yanks it down, it kind of pressure tests who's in the room. You know, what's their compass? What are they in this for? You know, if their compass is solid, this is just a speed bump. And it's interesting to see today who's building, who's funding, who's hiring. Because there's really these two flywheels at play. There's a speculative investment side, and then there's the blockchain utility, throughput, transactions, et cetera. And some people say, well, you know, it's so speculative. The speculation and investment is extremely important. It's like the oxygen that funds innovation. It's what happened with railroads, with the internet, with telephony, et cetera. You need investment and speculation to forge these new networks. And most of the investment speculation is derived by retail. So it's not, you know, State of Wisconsin Teachers Pension Association is into crypto. These are mostly retail investors. What's interesting is the institutional class of investors is starting to get their bearings, building custody, building enterprise-grade wallets so they can start engaging in this. And that's been a story that's upon us for the last couple of years, but we're seeing a lot more investment and a lot more seriousness in that side. So once that starts to click with institutions coming in, I think we're going to see that flywheel moving a little bit more. And then conversely, on the other side, with blockchain utility and utilization, a lot of these networks, look at Ethereum trying to do its backflip. EOS just launched its mainnet. Most of these networks are still wet cement, are measured in weeks and months, and so there's a lot of work to do. But once people start putting transactions and utility and balance sheet risk on these blockchains, you'll see another increase in terms of value creation. So let's talk about this crypto winter that we're in. Down 82%, everybody's heads in the sand, sky is falling. Not quite. If you look at, and I like to look at this space in kind of two areas, the Fortune 50, the household names that we all know, and then the Crypto 50, which is a whole new class of unicorns and scaled businesses in the crypto ecosystem. And out of the Fortune 50, it's amazing what's happened. Amazon's launched a cloud-based blockchain solution. CME, CBOE doing futures. Fidelity, a couple months ago, announced Fidelity Digital Asset Services, which will help institutions with custody and investing in crypto. NYSE, same thing. They have a subsidiary called Bakkt. Just raised about $200 million from Microsoft and others to build a similar platform for custody and investment. Bank of America is on here, not because they're building or innovating. They are the most prolific filer of patents on blockchain tech. So while they're not necessarily, you know, coding and trying to hack through this, they're taking a completely different approach. We'll see how well that plays out in this open source community. Microsoft has been in the game since day one, quite frankly, and has been continues to be prolific. IBM is up here. I thought the acquisition of Red Hat and kind of getting into the open source side with that, Hyperledger, et cetera, is an interesting signal, but we'll see what happens there. On the Crypto 50, this is phenomenal to see, and certainly it doesn't go without the roller coaster ride that is within crypto, where Bitmain was on track to do a massive IPO. That's kind of been subdued over the recent past, but it's a very scaled, mature, billion-plus revenue company. Binance, in 18 months, became the largest crypto exchange in the world. Bloq One raised $4 billion in its ICO. It's a massive treasure chest to deploy and incentivize developers and venture invest into new companies, et cetera. So there's a big advantage there. Coinbase just raised money at an $8 billion valuation. The way they're adding features and functions, pretty soon it'll be indistinguishable from your bank. Cardano, Quantum, some of these other networks that have raised lots of money are scaling and building are amazing to watch. So to the untrained eye, it looks like down 82%. What's next? Let's talk about AI or VR or AR or something. Crypto is alive and well. These are billions of dollars of investment, And this is just what's showing up versus what other people are building underneath. And so, seeing this reminds me of, and we're at CES here. So if I wish it was like a time machine at CES that I could go back, because anytime it's down 80+%, the only thing I wish I could do is invest more, build more, and hire more. It's the best time to build. So there's also these two worlds under construction. You have this Fortune 50 and this Crypto 50. And sometimes they're approaching the technology in different ways, where the Fortune 50 is sometimes saying, well, I want to use this technology to trade and settle faster and cheaper. That's great. That will absolutely happen. McKinsey, Goldman has plenty of research on how hundreds of billions of dollars will get saved by applying blockchain tech into underlying workflows and business systems. Totally true. It's just not like necessarily the point or the big aha moment of this technology in terms of these tokenized networks. And then on the other side, you have the Crypto 50. A lot of the names that we saw there that are looking like a bank, that are doing stuff differently, the way we want to do them, interacting on a mobile phone, and a lot more intuitive than the old way of whatever, going to a branch or anything else. And so what's interesting is that these two worlds are starting to connect and sometimes collide, and we'll see how that plays out over the near term as more scale comes into these systems. And one thing that we'll see, I think, as some of the ICOs have been subdued, and I'll also footnote that by great projects with great teams will always get financed. That goes through ups and downs of any market. And so we'll still see massive fundings of great projects. We just won't see the volume. I think the bar is raised in terms of having a great team, having a product or even the product more fully baked. And so funding is still available. But what's starting to come into focus is the notion of STOs, security token offerings. And what that means is you're taking a pretty normal concept of equitizing assets, but you're giving it in a token form. And I must admit, I didn't get into this space to tokenize a cap table or a hotel or a bar of gold. But tokenization of traditional assets, I think, is going to be a very important training wheels, if you will, for Wall Street and Main Street. Meaning, a lot of Wall Street investment bankers will go to their REIT clients and say, we should tokenize the shopping center. We'll get better liquidity, price discovery, et cetera. And so the model today is engineered to do that. But there's also other things that happen when you tokenize equity or real estate or art. On equity, you could create different incentives where the users, the consumers, get a piece of the company as they do different things. And as things get gamified, as you open and unlock different features and products. So I think that distance between the shareholders getting all the spoils to the consumer participating in that, I think that gap is going to close. Also on real estate, fractionalization of an asset and having a taxi driver in Indonesia or a soccer mom in Brazil have a piece of the Empire State Building and get a piece of that. That's what's upon us there. On the art piece, again, very similar to fractionalized real estate, but the interesting thing there is like you could start embedding things where maybe the artist that, the starving artist that sells a piece of artwork for $1,000 and then a year later it sells for 100 grand. Not so good for the artist. But maybe there's a way to embed in that smart contract or in that piece of equity that whenever it transfers, that artist gets 1%. Or maybe the artist keeps 10% of that piece of artwork, almost like schmuck insurance in case it does really well. And you could embed these things into these traditional assets to not just tokenize them, but actually change a bit of the game. And so, when you tokenize these traditional assets, what happens? Again, better access, better price discovery, lower transaction fees. You have all these different kind of benefits that come out of it. I think another piece, back to the training wheels of kind of this decentralized, tokenized future of money, identity, all these loyalty tokens, et cetera. But having these assets tokenized, all the form factors are different. The wallets, the exchanges, intelligent applications, and custody to make sure the stuff is secure. And I think that groundwork will usher this kind of undercurrent for all these other tokens and all these other networks and the Web3 of decentralized compute and storage and all these other things will help put that into better focus. So while, again, STOs is kind of from a technology standpoint, not as prolific as some of the other networks that are getting built, but again, super important training wheels and an enabler, I think, for this industry. So what is 2019 going to look like? I think the regulatory dynamics are still pretty tough. There's not a lot of certainty for investors or users in terms of what's going on out there. So I think there's going to be continued jurisdictional arbitrage. If you heat map the world in terms of where entrepreneurs are moving, and what's interesting is like being in tech and fintech and early stage startups, I've never seen this in my career where people will just forklift up and go to Singapore or Switzerland at the drop of a hat because they want to build and really exercise their business plans and not be marred by unnecessary or unclear legal regulations. But if you care deeply about the space, you need to engage and you need to interact with regulators to try and change that dialogue. I think it'll be several years before we get some serious clarity there. Adoption, this is, I always put a blowfish on here because historically, trying to manage your own crypto in your wallet was like trying to fillet a blowfish. If you hit the wrong gland, things will go wrong. And it was always hard. Crypto is hard to manage. I think the adoption curves and some of that will get helped out a lot with these STOs, this STO-topia that's upon us. And then lastly, hype, not much hype in the space. I think it's very pragmatic. I think people are pressure testing their assumptions, building an investment thesis, and this is not a misspelling. Buildle is a term of art in crypto, which means build. Keep your heads down and build. And so this is 10 years into this odyssey right now, and there's a lot of work to do. In many ways, the value of the crypto market is almost like seed stage for many people. It's like the point of this has been clarified that this is a thing. It's just going to take time to kind of get realized. But you guys are in the right room at the right time thinking about this. And this is a once in a lifetime type of opportunity. So thank you.